Welcome to the Top Listing Agent Show, the place to be to stay on the cutting edge of what it takes to sell more homes in less time. Each week, your host, Chadi Bazzi, will share with you the best skill sets, systems, and strategies so you can become a top listing agent. And now, let the show begin.
Hey, Chadi Bazzi here. Welcome to another episode of the Top Listing Agent Show. I know for some of you guys, you're probably thinking, where's this guy been? It's been, quite a while since he unleashed a new episode. I'll tell you, in the next 10 weeks, we will be releasing 10 new episodes, and I wanted to kick off this new season of podcast episodes with an amazing guest, Jim Remley. So, Jim, welcome to the Top Listing Agent Show.
Hey. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Good. I'm excited to share you with our audience today. I know you got a great story. I know you are in alignment with the conversation of my company on becoming a top listing agent. So for anyone out there wanting to take more listings, this is definitely the show for you to listen to more than once today, right?
Right. We're going to give you a lot of tips and tools today.
Well, so Jim, why don't you give us an introduction? Tell our audience who you are. A little bit of your story. How did we get here, et cetera?
So I got in real estate business when I was 19 last week. Just kidding. I'm 30 years in the business. So I always tell agents, don't let that scare you. My claim to fame is that my second year in the business, I took 150 listings, got rated in the top 1% of agents nationwide. After that, age of 23, opened my first company. We grew that to 17 offices, largest independent company in Oregon at that time. I sold my interest in 2006. I taught for the National Association of Realtors for about 10 years. And then I got recruited to come and run another company here in Southern Oregon. And so I am living the dream in Southern Oregon here. I'm also a speaker. I still speak around the country, and I have a coaching platform myself. But so things are good. I got 160 brokers that work with me. We do about $1 billion in sales a year.
Wow, that is impressive. I told you guys, we're going to kick off, the new season of the Top Listing Agent Show with a powerful guest. I mean, how much more powerful can it get? 150 listings in your second year in real estate.
Yes, sir. Yes.
How the heck did you do that? I mean, it takes people a decade before they can ever get to that kind of production, if they ever get to that kind of production. Here you are, you come in year number 2, and you knock it out the park like that. Was there a secret sauce, a formula?
There wasn't. I can tell you that I learned my system over time. What happened is I was a student of the game, and I think people that are watching this podcast are students, and you have to be a student if you want to be a master, right? And for me, I just went all in on training and education, and I went and saw every speaker. I read every book that I could, and then on top of that, I failed a lot. I mean, when people say, how'd you take 150 listings? My first answer is I went on 300 appointments. So I was going on, an appointment or 2 a day, definitely. And I was failing a lot. So people think it's all, this mountain of success. It's actually, every success is built on a mountain of failure. And the way you get good is by doing it a lot. And great book by Malcolm Gladwell, which is Outliers, which talks about the phenomenon. If you want to be a master of anything, you got to invest 10,000 hours. And when I'm talking and training and coaching agents, I'll say, how much time have you invested in your listing presentation, really? Have you invested 2 hours, really, just sitting and practicing it? 10 hours, 100 hours? Certainly not 10,000 hours, I guarantee it, right? And so that, for me, that's, my initial approach was going out and setting appointments. And actually, I found that setting appointments was actually relatively easy. People find that to be the hard part. I found that to be the easy part. My challenge was closing those appointments, which it took a while to figure that out.
So the challenge wasn't in lead generation, it was in converting the actual listing, appointments.
No, because I think I always tell agents, if you listen really close in your market right now, if you really listen, there is somebody somewhere talking about selling their house right now. In fact, today, if you go on your MLS sheet and you look at the 24-hour report, some people call it the hot sheet, you're going to see in some markets, 100 listings being taken every single day. In my market, which is a relatively small market, we have an 80,000 population base. There's 50 or 60 or 70 listings being taken every day. So there's a ton of opportunity out there, right? And it's just your job to go out and find it. And there's so many ways to do it. I mean, I train on for sale by owners and expired listings, and I certainly went after those. But I also did a lot of geographic farming. We train people now to do something called narrowcasting, which is something I learned over the years. I can tell you what that means really quickly. And it's a super great technique for those agents that are like really struggling and like, how do I prospect in a way that isn't awkward and feels natural and makes sense. And so what we train our agents to do in my coaching platform is we say, you're going to be showing homes every day. Even if you're a brand new agent, you're going to be showing homes, right? And everybody says, yes, I'm going to be showing homes. So here's what you do. After you show a home, if it's 4 or 5, 6, 7 homes a week, you circle back the same day that you showed the house, right? And you go on you knock on 5 doors on either side of that house. And here's what you say exactly. You say, hey, I just showed your neighbor's house, and you point to it, that house. And, it didn't quite fit my clients, but they love the neighborhood and they'd love to live here. I got a crazy question for you. Would you consider selling your house for the right price? Now that does a lot of different things. It's a sense of urgency because you just showed the house, right? It's also this immediacy, but also it's very specific to their neighborhood. It's not just a blanket thing that's happening. And when you say the right price, everybody will sell for the right price. Every single person will sell for the right price. So then it's just a conversation of what is that price, and then you get into that. But it will stop every single one of those homeowners dead in their tracks. And they will, when you watch this, if you do this, watch the phenomenon. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to say those words out of your mouth at the answer to the door. Their eyes will go up and to the left because they'll think, would I sell for the right price? And you would do it too. If somebody came to your door, you'd be like, well, maybe. It depends on the price. And it's really a great technique we found to use.
I love it. I never personally heard of this technique, after you show a property, etc. I'm going to go ahead and steal that one from you.
Do it. I can give you one more. You can layer on it. Okay.
Here's
one more technique. And it's
the more the merrier.
Yeah, for sure. So the other technique is the same kind of thing, but when you write an offer on a house, we all write offers, hopefully every month we're writing several offers, but we're not always successful, right? We're competing sometimes, and sometimes it just doesn't come together. So every time you have a failure when you write an offer, what you do is you circle back and you do the same thing. You knock on 5 doors on the other side and you say this, hey, I just wrote an offer on your neighbor's house, and you point to the house and you say that house. Unfortunately, didn't come together, and maybe it was a multiple offer, whatever. It just didn't come together. But my buyers love the neighborhood. Crazy question. Would you consider selling for the right price? This is even more powerful because you actually wrote an offer. And so people are like, whoa, I got a live, real buyer here. And that's another reason why this technique's so powerful is because you're dealing with a live buyer. It's not like, would you sell, none of that. Would you like a free CMA? It's all about real thing happening in real time.
I love it. I mean, look at that. We're not even 10 minutes into the podcast and you're already dropping nuggets. It's like I'm thinking about how many more can I extract from Jim to Bo? This is
a lot.
Advice that, people pay money for, and here we are sharing it, etc. I want to circle back to some of the things that you said a little bit ago.
Sure.
You said, I'm a student of the game. Okay.
Yeah.
And, I want to know specifically what that means for you and how one can really become a good student, because I think that, we all get into this business, with the mentality that we are a student of the game, but then something happens and then we lose our mojo or our excitement, the moment that we are faced with defeat, etc. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what you have to do as an agent is you have to look at a huge amount of different styles of selling. So different coaches, different speakers, different podcasts. And what's going to happen with you is you're going to develop your own style, but you can't model just one person. And the reason for that is, you're a different person than that person you're watching or listening to. And so what happens with a lot of agents is they'll go to a seminar, they'll go to a breakout session, they'll buy a book, they'll listen to a podcast, whatever. And then they'll think, I got to follow this pattern exactly. That's not the case. You're only looking for, you just mentioned it, you're looking for nuggets that resonate with you. Don't try to model those people exactly because they're not you. And the other thing that goes along with this that I learned is you have to latch on to what I call yesable ideas. And what a yesable idea is something that you would say yes to if you were the consumer, right? Because if you wouldn't say yes to it as a consumer, you won't believe in the sales technique, and you will fail. So a good example of that, you go to a seminar and somebody tells you something that they would say to a for sale by owner or an expired listing, but it doesn't resonate with you, and you know in your mind you would say no to it if you're the consumer. Then you go out and try it, and you know it's going to fail, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because you don't believe in the idea. You have to find ideas that you first and foremost would say yes to if you were on the other side of the door. And once you find those, that's the ones you go out and implement. But that takes a lot of work. You got to go out and really do some research.
I agree with you 100%. And then, one of the things that you said is you get a little bit from this person, a little bit from that person. And I just want to clarify that a little bit more
Sure.
by saying the following, and I want you to correct me if you feel otherwise, because, I'm not perfect. I don't get it right all the time. And, we're very coachable, et cetera. You said, model the person. And, sometimes, I personally feel like, we don't want to model the person. Maybe we shouldn't model the person, but we should model the strategy regardless of how we feel about the person.
Yeah.
That?
I agree 100%. You're modeling techniques and strategy, and you want to be your own authentic person and be yourself. And people resonate with people that are authentic. And if you're just trying to be like everyone else, that doesn't work. You got to be who you really are. And it shows through. I mean, people appreciate it when you come through and you're showing off your real personality. The most successful agents are the ones that actually take the time to get to know their clients and develop personal relationships with their clients. And you mentioned something earlier about being a student of the game, which is important for people to realize. When I coach a lot of high-level teams and high-level agents, and what happens is a lot of times, and the reason why they stop being a student of the game is because they become successful. And sometimes success is their own worst enemy. And a great example of that is with the listing presentation. One of my first questions I'll ask a team leader or a super successful agent is, when is the last time you updated your listing presentation? And inevitably, it's going to be, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And you break it out, and it's ancient. I mean, it looks ancient. I just had this with a coaching student of mine who's a $50 million producer. And we broke it out, and I said, this looks like it was done in 2000. This looks terrible. I mean, you go up against a millennial agent who's bringing out an iPad and just flipping through things in front of somebody, you're going to get destroyed. And he was losing listing appointments, and it was because he stopped being a student of the game.
Love it. Talking about that, I think one of the most important things is in order for you to literally be authentic. I mean, I believe that authenticity is, I'm going to say almost all the time, if you are a student of the game and you have updated your listing presentation and you totally understand all the moving parts of the business, and you just show up and you be authentic, honest, sincere, and genuine, I think literally 9 out of 10 times, that's going to win you the freaking damn listing.
Absolutely. Yeah, 9 out of 10 times what you'll find is that people list with you because they like you, first and foremost. And then everything else is kind of secondary. You won't win a listing where people don't like you. So first you have to establish rapport and trust. And I learned that because I in doing all the work that I did, is I was really, really a guy that brought in all the ammunition, man. I had all the firepower with me. I brought in a tank. I had an Abrams tank when I was rolling in there. But what I found was that wasn't what was winning the listings. What wins the listings is your personal connection with the client. But for me, it was a little bit of a double-edged sword, because I was 19 when I started in the business. And so people look at you as a little bit of a kid. I just had a 19-year-old come to work for me, and he says, "Oh, how do I overcome this?" I'm like their grandson or something. And I said, they won't care about that so much as caring about you as a person. If you can come through as somebody that's authentic, and you've got a good presence, you come across confident and professional, and you know your numbers, you can overcome all that. It's all about how you present yourself. Love it.
Okay, so it's like, I'm like writing down certain things that you're saying because I want to circle back to them and expand on them, etc.
Sure.
I heard you earlier mention two of my favorite words. Well, actually, you mentioned literally a lot of words that I absolutely love. but two of them really stood out. And then I just added a third one right now. And I'd like to place a little bit of emphasis of our conversation on that. And the two words were for sale by owners and expireds. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because a lot of people say, hey, well, it's 2019. We're in the world of technology. You know, we're in the world of, you know, online marketing. And then, you know, for sale by owners ain't what they used to be. Expireds ain't what they used to be. And I'm like, dude, I got a client that's never called for sale by owners or expireds in his life. And he's taken 60 listings so far this year just from for sale by owners and expireds. You know, what's your experience with the people you're coaching and training and your all that good stuff with for sale by owners? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So for sale by owners, I'll start there. I've listed hundreds and hundreds of for sale by owners myself. I'm sure you have as well. So with for sale by owners, you can just look at the statistics, and the statistics are that 9 out of 10 of them will list with a realtor. And these aren't my stats. This is NAR stats. 92% will list with a realtor. It's just a question of when. So when people say technology has changed the game, we heard that. You know, this is a guy that's been in business 30 years. In 1980s and 90s, we heard that technology was going to disintermediate agents because they would no longer need us because they just put their house on the internet. Actually, the numbers of people that convert to working with an agent have increased, not decreased with technology. Reason is sellers find it so overwhelming and so frustrating to actually deal with all the technology and everything else involved with selling their house and the complexities of the paperwork and the liability and the financing and everything else that goes along with it. So actually, people are much more likely to go with an agent today than they were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And that's not me talking, that's NAR statistics. So it's grown from about 80% now to 92%, which is an all-time high. So I can walk you through my entire technique with for sale by owners in about 3 minutes if you want me to.
You know, I would love that because, you know, the core of my program, I mean, yeah, we teach anything and everything else in terms of lead generation. But I'm a lot focused on working for sale by owners and expireds because in my experience, that's what was good, you know, for me. And that's what's been very good for my clients. But before we get into that,
Sure.
a lot of people are afraid to call on for sale by owners.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
They are.
how do you, like, do you have a formula? Like, you know, when some people come to work with you and you're like, hey, I want you to call for sale by owners, and they begin to resist, like, do you have a process that you walk people through to help them overcome that fear of whatever?
Well, I think the best solution for fear is success. And the only way you get through that fear is by doing and taking action. And so a lot of times I'll sit with them and I'll walk them through the process of here's exactly what you say to a for sale by owner. And let me promise you this, if you follow what I'm telling you right now, 8 out of 10 times when you make these calls, you're going to set an appointment. Just call 10. That's all I'm asking. Not the end of the world. Just call 10 and apply the technique I'm going to give to you. And then you come back and tell me how hard it was. And if it was the worst thing you've ever experienced in your life, I'll never ask you to do it again. But if you set appointments, you're going to come in this room and you're going to thank me for the help. And that's the way I go about it. And I coach them specifically, and I have the script right in front of them, so they can actually just read the script. I make it pretty easy for them, right? So it's all about success. Success is the ultimate way you get through any fear. You got to push past it and go through it, because every kind of prospecting has fear attached to it, and it's the reason why nobody does it. And the fear comes from a risk. It's a relationship risk. And the relationship risk is they're going to reject me, but they're not rejecting you as a person. They're rejecting what you're offering, right, in sales. But if we're going to be entrepreneurs, we live in the risk zone. In order for us to succeed, we have to be taking risks. And the more risks we take relationship-wise, which means putting ourselves out there and possibly being rejected every day, the more successful we're going to become. I always relate it back to your first kiss. And I'll say, do you remember your first kiss? And they'll say, well, yeah, I remember my first kiss. And so I'll say, so you took a relationship risk, right? And you took that risk and you leaned in, and you could have been rejected. She could have slapped your face and said, get out of here, bum. But I bet if you landed the kiss, it was the best experience of your life. Yes, it's the same thing in real estate. We're not leaning in for a kiss, but we're leaning in for acceptance. But as soon as you get that acceptance, it'll be the best day of your life when you start setting appointments.
Love it. Love it. So Yeah, so walk us through, your 2-3 minutes of, your for sale by owner approach, and then I wrote down a question I want to ask you specifically about that once we're done with that.
Sure, sure. So my approach with for sale by owners is I have three different scripts that I use, but one of the simplest one is, hey, my name is Jim Remley. I'm with ABC Real Estate, and I noticed you have your home on whatever, Zillow, noticed the yard sign, saw the ad in Craigslist. First, I want to tell you this, and this is the magic words. The first thing I want to tell you is this. I'm not calling to list your house, and I respect your decision to sell on your own. But I do have a quick question. If I have a buyer, would you be open to allowing me to show the property? 9 out of 10 times, people will say yes to that. Now, they may give you what I call an early minor objection, which is they might say, yeah, but I'm not paying a fee, or yeah, but if I list it, I'm going to list it with my Uncle Bob, or yeah, if I list it, I'm going to list it with a discount brokerage or whatever. And the failure of most agents at that point is to allow that to stop them from moving forward. I use a 3-step approach to those early kind of smokescreen objections where I'll say, first of all, I listen. That's step one. Second is I sidestep the objection because it's not a real objection. It's just a smokescreen at this point. So I sidestep it and say, totally understand. You only want to pay 1% if you list the property, get it. Totally understand you want to list with your Uncle Bob if you list the property. Totally get it. But at this point, you're for sale by owner, right? So that's the third stage. At this point, you're still for sale by owner. I'd love an opportunity to just come by and take a quick look at the house. It only takes about 10 minutes for me to walk through if you're okay with it. Most of the time, people are going to be okay with it. So that's one simple technique. Another technique that I use when I have one that says principals only, you see those, or no agents.
Right.
No agent ones are the ones you should call first because no other agent's going to call them, right? And for them, it's it's almost a funny thing for most of these people that put no agents. They're usually the nicest people in the world, but they're just doing it so they don't get a bunch of calls, right? And so when they put no agents, here's my approach. I treat the seller as a buyer. And so I'll say, hey, Jim Remley here with ABC Real Estate. Saw your ad on Craigslist. Want to tell you, I'm not calling to ask you your listing. I respect your decision to sell on your own. And I know you said no agents, but here's the reason for my call. The reason for my call is, have you started looking for your next house? Because I'm a specialist in helping people relocate. Are you going to be staying local or moving out of the area? Because I'd love to work with you as a buyer if you haven't already chosen an agent. And when you come at it from a buyer's angle, you can circle back to the selling angle, but you're starting with the buyer's angle. If they say, no, we're already working with an agent, no problem. Great. Can I ask you another question since I already got you on the phone? If I have a buyer that's interested in a property like yours, would you be open to allowing me to come and see it? And again, 9 out of 10 times they're going to say yes to that. And I've actually created 10 different scripts. Those are 2 of the 10 that I use, but simple. I mean, any one of those is going to get you in the front door. What I learned was setting those appointments was super easy, right? I can set appointments like that all day long, every day in any market. You could drop me into LA and drop me into, New York City. I could use that script and I'd set appointments all day long. The harder part is, what do you do when you get there? And this is what I had to go through is how do you close these people? And that's definitely a coaching element. But my approach when I got to the house, and I'll just do a quick 2 minutes of that, is I would say, hey, give me a chef's tour of the house. Thanks for letting me come by. Give me a chef's tour of the house. Now, I don't know what a chef's tour is, but I just like the verbiage. It sounds cool to me. So they'll say, oh, yeah, sure, great. So I'm walking through the house. I'm going to ask them 3 key questions. Why are you selling? When are you selling? Where are you moving to? And then as we walk through, what I'm doing is I'm taking detailed notes. I've got a yellow legal pad. I'm taking notes. If there's something cool in the house, I'll say, hey, that's really cool. Can I take a picture of that? And what I'm using here is a vesting strategy. The vesting strategy means I'm building trust and rapport because I'm asking questions. I'm a master at asking questions. And I'm getting them to talk about their house, their life experience, why they're selling, all these things. But the vesting strategy is I want them to get invested in this relationship. And the more invested they get in a relationship with me, the less likely they're going to be to invest with anyone else. So this is part of a process of having conversation and really getting into who these people are as people and getting them into a position where they kind of like me. As we're wrapping up that 10, 15, 20-minute tour, usually, by the way, it's never 10 minutes. Usually it's an hour. It goes longer. And then I'll say this, hey, I promised you I'm not going to list. I wasn't going to ask you for your listing, and I'm not. But can I ask you a question? And they'll always say, sure. So if at any point you're not successful selling on your own, do you think you might hire a realtor? If at any point you're not successful selling on your own, do you think you might hire a realtor? Most people, again, will look up and to the left and be like, maybe. Or, yeah, probably. So how long do you think you might give it? 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 5 years? And I always say that to make it light and funny. And they'll say, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, no problem. You mind if I stay in touch with you from time to time, just see how you're doing? Mine's a completely no pressure approach. And they'll usually say yes. And I'll say, great, I'll give you a call just every week or so, just check in, see if the home's sold, what's going on. Maybe I'll update you on the market stats, what's happening. By the way, before I leave, and now I'm going to use the Columbo technique, which is I'm always going to come back, and there's always a reason to come back, right? There's always some little reason to come back. So I'll say, has anybody given you a list of the top 10 competitors that you have for a buyer for your home? And they'll be like, what does that mean? Well, on average, a buyer will look at 10 homes over 10 weeks. So, when people look at your home, they're also going to look at 9 others. Has anybody showed you the 9 others they're going to look at? And they'll say, no. If you want me to, I can shoot that over to you if you want. And now I'm starting relationship. And then there's a ton of other ideas, but that's my 2-minute version, of an 8-hour class. That's it.
And I got that on video right here for our Instagram followers. So I'll make sure I tag you in the post, etc. So we get it out there, because that right there was like total. What you did right there, Jim, is strategy. And strategy is something that a lot of people don't think about. I'm okay with having a do whatever it takes attitude, because, that's like, I would say that's, one of the, winning common denominators of, top listing agents. But, that can only get you so far. And then if you already have that and you have a strategy behind it, that's where the quantum leap happens. And I think that's probably why you were able to get to 150 deals in your second year, and were able to go on 1 to 2 appointments every single day, is you've identified the strategy. You had I'm going to do whatever it takes to put that strategy to work attitude. You put it to work, and all of a sudden you're out there, you're meeting people, zero pressure on the people, which that's what people want, is the people that, the zero pressure. And, your strategy is definitely a winning strategy. Now, a couple of times throughout this podcast, I heard you use the word, I listen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Which I think is one of the biggest reasons why people don't convert their listing appointments when they're on their listing appointments or trying to get the appointment, is because they have a script in their hand and they're dying to get through the whole entire script, because they're measuring their success by getting through the script, when it should be like, can I listen to what I'm supposed to listen to so I can connect and get the freaking damn appointment?
Right. I love it. Yes. It's all about listening. And I say it's a listening presentation, not a listing presentation. It's all about how you listen and how powerful you are at using active listening, which is active listening is not just hearing someone, because I can sit on my couch and I can hear my wife tell me something, and I can repeat it back to her actually, but it doesn't mean I'm listening at all, right? Active listening means that I'm going to be able to ask a question relevant to what they just said. And so I'm always peeling the onion. The onion's the big picture. And what salespeople are often trained to do is to ask the first question, but there's about 10 other questions behind every question. So when somebody says, hey, we're going to move to Colorado, for instance, then I'm going to say, oh, that's great. Why Colorado? Why are you choosing that? Oh, we got grandkids there. Oh, really? How long have your grandkids lived there? Did they originally live here? How old are your grandkids? Oh, when's the last time you've been to Colorado? Have you looked at places in Colorado? So it's not just stopping at Colorado. It's digging deep into that. I want to know everything about that. And when people are talking, they feel like they're building connection with you. And so the more they talk, the more connection they have with you. It's not about you talking, because we can all give a monologue, right? We can all just talk. We're salespeople. We can talk all day long. But that's not what it's about. The most powerful presentation is 80% of the time you're listening. 20% of the time you're talking, which is something that one of the hardest lessons I learned as a salesperson was most of the time I need to shut up. And I just need to be a master at asking questions. The most powerful listing agents are the ones that are the masters at asking questions. We've actually developed 20 questions within our coaching platform that we say, hey, these are the 20 questions you have to ask every single time that will open up this conversation to a bigger degree. But you're absolutely right. It's all about listening.
Talking about the listening, Jim, and, I believe that, as the world is constantly changing. This generation that we live in right now is completely different than our parents' generation, and the generation that we grew up in. etc. And
Sure.
because of the mobile device, which is, a great device, and because of this mobile device, a lot of people, when, like, for example, you go to a restaurant and then it's mom, dad, son, daughter, and each one is sitting on the freaking damn phone. And then,
Yeah.
son puts down his phone, is like, daddy, daddy, daddy. But, daddy's not listening,
Right.
the significant others, the wife is not listening or the husband is not listening. And then you see all these teenagers going on Instagram and everything, and they're doing everything they possibly can to be seen, to be heard. So all of a sudden, I believe that, one of the greatest human needs, besides, surviving and, shelter and food, is to be heard.
Absolutely.
So,
I had a great speaker told me, you know what you should do when you go to dinner, because you're bringing up dinner. That's so true. You go to every restaurant and you see this happening, is do it with your family. And I did this because I've got a pretty big family, 4 kids. A lot of them are now in adulthood. They all bring their significant others. So we went to dinner at an Italian restaurant. I said, okay, everybody take your phone and put it in the middle of the table, and nobody's going to touch your phone through dinner. And we all had dinner, and it was a weird experience because we're used to you being on our phone. And that has changed over the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years. It wasn't as bad as it is today. Today it's really bad, everybody. And it's really interesting to watch. If you put your phone down, how much of a drive you have to want to pick that phone up. It's a very interesting how it's an addiction.
And that's what I'm talking about is, the phone is an addiction. But then again, it's kind of like, so, back to the point of like, everybody wants to be heard. So it's like when you go on a listing presentation and, you sit down in front of a couple or, Mr. Seller or, Mrs. Seller, et cetera, and they're speaking and you're listening. It's a different connection now than it would have been 10, 15 years ago, because now their longing to be heard is even greater. So all of a sudden, that activates the likability factor. Like, I really like this guy. Nobody, and it's not like they're thinking that. That's just what's psychologically happening, and that's what's going to give you, greater odds of winning the listing. And I love your idea about when you go to a restaurant, put the phones in the middle of the table. I'm going to start practicing that, and I'm going to take that to the next level, especially when I go out like with a bunch of friends and stuff like that. I'm going to say, and I'm going to take them to like the most expensive restaurants in Orange County.
Do it.
The phone in the middle of the table, and the first person that grabs the phone is the person that pays the check.
I love it. I got 2 things with that too, just really quickly. There's been a study done that when you're talking to clients, you're talking to a client for the first time, there's a tendency, especially with younger agents, to keep holding their phone in their hand. They walk in with it because they were on the phone right before the appointment. But when you hold the phone in your hand, you're giving the signal that if this thing goes off, what's on here might be more important than the person I'm sitting in front of. So you physically have to put the phone away, not only turn it off, and you might announce to the client, hey, I'm going to turn my phone off. This is a really important appointment for me. I want to hear everything you have to say. I want to take it all in. I'm going to put the phone away. One thing that's going to do is going to kind of force them to do the same, even though you haven't told them they should do the same. It will force them. But by keeping that phone in your hand, you are signaling the phone's more important than they are, psychologically, like you're talking about, which is really important. But let me give you one other idea around prospecting that a lot of agents may not have thought of. And that is with FSBOs and expired listings, is that 52% of sellers today are first-time home sellers, not first-time home buyers, but first-time home sellers. And when you think about the demographic of who these people are, most of these people are millennial sellers. They bought their first house, and now they're selling for the first time. And because of that, if you physically are calling them on the phone, a lot of them will be like, I don't answer the phone unless I know who's calling me. So they'll be like, nope, and no one ever answer the phone. So you're like, well, how do I make contact with these people? So what we're training our agents to do is, first of all, you should always try to make phone contact, of course, right? But we're giving our students cold texting scripts. So now we're going to text the for sale by owner. We're going to text the expired listing. And we're going to use very, very short language because that's what people identify with. But we are going to try to set the appointment doing that way. And then we take it one step further and we do a text video. So we can all take our phones and we can do a video of ourselves, right? Now I want you to imagine this, a couple things first of all. Imagine I do one video and on my phone I say, hey, I saw your ad on Craigslist this morning. I'm very interested in taking a quick walk through it. If you'd be open to allow me to do that, please give me a call, send me a text. I would love to come through the house. Now, imagine you do that and you don't make it specific to the house, right? You just say, hey, I saw your advertisement for your listing. But now imagine that you have an assistant if you're a team leader, or even if you're not a team leader, you hire a college kid or your son or your daughter or whoever. And you say, every day you're going to log on to Craigslist and you're going to send this video text to every single one of these people. And it could be by email too. You could send an email video of yourself as well. We think of the power of that. That's so powerful because a lot of these millennials won't pick up the phone, right? So we've had great success with our cold texting techniques.
I love it. I love it. You know what? Here's the thing, man. It's like a lot of people like are stuck in doing things just one way.
Right.
And you know, here you are saying, you know, like, you know, it's like the statistic that you just shared with us. I guarantee you, like literally over 90% of the people listening to this podcast, which we get about 25,000 downloads every single month, are going to be like, well, I never really thought of it that way. You know, 52% of the sellers nowadays are first-time home sellers. It's like, you know, the term that's always being thrown around is first-time home buyer. I never hear anyone, you know, talk about first-time, you know, home sellers. And, you know, it got me to thinking of the idea right now of like, you know, I think what would be clever for a very innovative, you know, good marketing top listing agent would be is, you know, why don't we create what's called a first-time home seller program?
Love it. Great idea. Great idea.
Maybe it's something that you and I can collaborate on and, you know, help, you know, listing agents, you know, attract more of, you know, those people. And since these people are millennials, you know, we know exactly where they're hanging out online. And that way we can, you know, create a specific lead magnet to bring them into our world that way as well, too.
I love it. That's a great idea. You can create a sales funnel all the way around that. That's a great idea.
100%. Okay, so we're doing good. We are doing good. It's like, do we give any more nuggets? Or better yet, let's just say this. I mean, clearly you're beginning to notice Jim is someone who is definitely a person of contribution, who's bringing his A game, you know, to this podcast and sharing a ton of great information with you. So rather than say that this conversation is going to be a to be continued conversation, I want you to go ahead and pull out your credit card right now so we can. No, I'm messing with you guys. Always be selling, man. Always be selling. I'm going to keep on extracting from you. That's one thing I'm very good at. All right, so look, we talked about being student of the game. We talked about being all in. We talked about narrow casting. We talked about building rapport. We talked about first time, you know, home sellers. We talked about for sale by owners. We touched a little bit on the expired. We touched a little bit on the listing presentation. I want to talk a little bit about the presentation, if you're okay with that, Jim. If you can give me like.
Absolutely.
Okay. So look, you know, when I first got in real estate, I remember my broker saying, you know, here's a Bresser. It used to be called a Bresser back then. And, you know, had, you know, all the names and phone numbers of people. And they gave me a script and they said, make phone calls. And the more people you speak with, the more, you know, appointments you're going to go on. And that's where the training like literally stopped for me. So I got on the phones and like literally it took approximately 2,000 contacts for me to set my first appointment, Jim. And when I said that, I'm telling you, I was like totally excited. Like if I could have done a backflip, I would have done a backflip. I called up mom, I called up dad, I called up all my friends to share my excitement with them that, hey, I just finally got my first listing appointment. And as soon as like I made all those phone calls and I sat down, you know, like I was crippled with fear because this is the extent of the training that I got. I've never done a listing presentation. And I was so afraid, Jim, that I never ever showed up to that first listing appointment.
Wow.
That was, you know, my personal experience. And that's what led me to become a student in the game, to go out there and learn, you know, what I needed to learn, et cetera. So now, you know, one of the biggest pillars, okay, one of the biggest pillars for helping, you know, my coaching clients, you know, from all over the country and how to become a top listing agent is the mastery of the listing presentation. You know,
absolutely.
And I tell my clients that, you know, the listing presentation is nothing more than a conversation. And the better that you are having a conversation, the better your outcomes will be. So what we did is in my listings on demand training, Jim, the goal is for every single person, and I'm not sure if you follow me online, you've probably seen this. Every single person is like literally has to do a listing presentation with blindfolds on. Okay,
Nice.
like I want to get you to the point. Like every single person has to get to the point to where, like literally, because we do videos the way people are watching this video, and they're doing a full blown listing presentation with you in practice with the blindfolds on. I mean, that's how important it is. Okay, so can you give maybe I know you've given the great tip in the beginning of the chef's store in terms of walking inside the house and building rapport and activating the likability factor or anything like that. But here's where I feel like a lot of people fail on a listing presentation in two major places outside of what you've already shared. One of them is around pricing, and one of them is around like, how do I wrap up this listing presentation and ask for the signature? Can you speak a little bit about that so we could just all the pieces?
Absolutely. So first of all, one of the hardest things I think that happens with agents is they build a great presentation. They know the script inside and out, but when they're in the moment with the seller, even my top agents will say, I skipped it. I didn't even do the listing presentation. And they have this hard time of actually physically getting it out of the bag. So I say, I'm going to give you the magic sentence for you to use for the rest of your career. And this is going to help you get your listing presentation out. Okay. And they say, what is it? What is it? And you simply say, hey man, can I just take a couple minutes and show you how I work? Can I just take a couple minutes and show you how I work? And everybody says, of course, that's why you're here. So now I get my presentation out, right? I'm gonna say, well, I use a visual presentation, just makes it easier for me. I don't forget anything. And then I go through my presentation. But in terms of the actual delivery of the presentation, I start by saying, hey, before I start talking, is there any questions that you guys have? I want to lead with that. Because I think it's always the most important thing is I can tell you everything I'm going to tell you, but if I don't answer your question, what's the point, right? So you tell me what's most on your mind right now? What are the biggest fears you have? What are you most concerned with listing the property? So because I want to get from them what their hot buttons are, I want to lead with their need. I don't want to lead with my need. And if I'm a real student of the game, I go to 3 different levels with my presentation. First is I memorize the presentation. I have to memorize it like a doctor, like an attorney, like a tax accountant. I got to memorize stuff. And this, if you want to be paid $500,000 a year, you got to memorize something. And so these agents that refuse to memorize anything, well, then you're not going to make anything. So good luck. It's not going to happen. So you got to memorize it. Then you internalize it like an athlete. I want to be able to throw that ball. Like when you're saying blindfolded, this is completely the same thing. I want to be able to throw that ball, hit that racket in such a way with that golf club that I don't have to think about the mechanics of it. I can just do it. With blindfolded, I can do it. And then third, but the most important level to get to is mastery. And you got to go through the first stage, memorization, internalization before you get to mastery. And mastery means that I can personalize that presentation. And personalization starts with that initial question, which I just asked, which was, what's most important to you? Now, if somebody says to me, I really want to talk about social media. I really want to talk about technology. I want to talk about your website. I'm gonna say, great. Let's start there, and then I'll cover the rest. I'm still gonna cover the rest, but I'll start there because I know it's important to you. Now I have my presentation out. I can flip straight to that part of my presentation, and I can get right into that because I know that's what's important to them. I'm leading with the client need. If I don't do that, they're going to be waiting for that to happen, right? So when you talk about price, and when I have that conversation, the number one thing people say is most concerned about price. And I'll say, yep, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And I'll say, here's my first pages of my presentation lead with this. I'll say, there's 3 reasons why a home will or won't sell. I call them the 3 Ps. It's price, product, and promotion. People have different words for it, but it's like a 3-legged table.
Yeah.
And if one of those legs on that table is out of alignment, the table falls over, and what that means to you is your house fails to sell. So we have to have these 3 things aligned. Number 1 is price, right? And pricing a home is completely different than it was 5 years ago. And people will be like, well, how's it different than it was 5 years ago? And I'll say, because you have to take into consider something I call search engine pricing. And search engine pricing is a conversation that I do a whole webinar and program on this myself. I teach this all over the country, but search engine pricing means if I'm a buyer, You got to think like a buyer, right? So if I'm a buyer, what's the first thing I do when I'm interested in real estate? I'm going to land on Zillow. I'm going to land on Realtor.com. I'm going to land on a website of some kind, or I'm going to be on an app on a mobile device. About 60% of clients are now on a mobile device when they're searching real estate. And what's going to happen is I'm not going to type in a price. I don't type in a price. I use a sliding bar or a preset price that's already set for me. I know sort of my price range, but I'm not going to type in 218,000 to 222,000. It's not going to happen. I'm going to say 200,000 to 250, right? So that's my swimming hole, right? That's where people are going to be activated. So we have to keep in mind how search engine pricing affects how we price the property, because most agents are focused on comparable pricing. And I've done a CMA for you, and I'm going to show you what your comparable price should be. And that's the same approach that an appraiser will use. But your comps may not reflect where the market is. Actually, sometimes you'll get more money, sometimes a little bit less, but you need to be where the fish are swimming. I could have the best bait in the world, the best comparable price in the world, but if I'm putting that bait in a hole where there's no fish, you end up not selling. And then I anchor that down and I'll say, let me give you a classic example of this. You've got a neighbor and you point. I got a neighbor. You got a neighbor down the street who's been on the market about 152 days. You see it every time you drive home, right? On 3rd Street. They didn't price their property properly. And one of the things they missed was search engine pricing. First of all, they're overpriced, but they're also not fishing in the right hole. So then I walk them through all that whole conversation. And it's a deep conversation. One of the aspects of that is, so every buyer is signed up on a portal, right? So a portal means if I'm a buyer and I start that search process, I pick my search pattern. From there, I get an email every time a listing hits the market that matches my search criteria. That's what happens in a digital world today. So how does that impact you as a seller? Here's the way it impacts you. Because when they get that listing, the entire market is going to get that listing within 24 hours of us listing this property. So within 24 hours, the entire what I call backlog of buyers, the 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 buyers that are in the market to buy a home like yours in this neighborhood in your relative price range, are all going to turn and look at your listing at the same time. It's like a pretty girl entering the pool. Everybody's going to turn and look at her at the same time. And every one of those people is going to make a snap decision about, do I want to see this listing in person or not? That's why listings that sell in our market are going to sell during the first week or 2 or 3. And after that 3rd or 4th week, you're going to see a major price reduction to reactivate those buyers that may have decided it was overpriced at that point. I don't want you to have that experience, so we got to be really, really strategic in how we price this property. I'm going to give you my thoughts, and then we walk through that. So that's kind of the beginning of my conversation. And I have a whole, script that goes behind that, but that's getting people to this understanding of like, oh yeah, maybe I'm not just going to price it based on comps. Maybe I need to think about where the buyers are in this marketplace.
Well,
so that's part of it.
Right. Not only that, I feel like in you doing it that way, you're also differentiating yourself from just about every other person that's walking in with a basic, old school CMA.
Right. And another thing that we coach on, which is the idea of never using a 9. And people say, why don't you use 9s? And the reason is, first of all, we're not Walmart. That's why we don't use 9s. This isn't real estate 1972. This is real estate in 2019, almost 2020. And here's the reason, because the search patterns, there are no 9s in a Zillow search pattern. There are no 9s in a Realtor.com search pattern. There's no 9s in the search pattern of somebody using a sliding bar on an app. It's going to say 200 to 250, 225 to 275. So there's no 9s there. And here's the most powerful thing as I talk about straddling markets. I'll say, so the comps tell us that we should be priced at 258. Let's just say. But let me give you an idea around this. And this is talking about activating the market. If we price your property at 250, what's going to happen in the search pattern is that buyers are looking between 250 and 3 will see your listing, but also buyers looking between 200 and 250 will see your listing. You'll straddle both markets. You'll double your market activity. Yes, it's $8,000 difference, but think of the amount of activity we might generate. We might get you over that number if we get a multiple offer situation. If I do what most agents do, and I go to 199.9 or 299.9, which drives me absolutely freaking crazy, you're missing $100 away from a whole nother price category, a whole nother pool of buyers you could be accessing the property. So those are kind of the really strategic pricing conversations that we have with our clients.
Love it. Love it. Jim, I mean, we're 52 minutes into this podcast, and I'm just like super excited that, we got you on the show today and all that good stuff. And I feel like you and I can definitely go on for hours talking about this stuff. It never gets boring for the real student in the game because, you began as the student in the game, and, we still are a student of the game, and learning definitely never stops. And I'm sure there's people that are, watching this video and or listening to this podcast who may have never heard of you before. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Most.
yeah. They're probably wondering, like, who is this Jim guy? How can I tap more into his mind? How can I tap more into his training? How can I get a hold of him? So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, whether it's to send a referral and or to, work with you as a coach, mentee kind of, relationship, etc. How do people, get a hold of you? How can we get a hold of you?
So the best way to find me is on erealestatecoach.com. That's a letter E, realestatecoach.com. And we have a coaching platform there. We have a ton of mastery classes around lead generation for sell by owners, expired listings, sphere of influence, business to business. But we've also just rolled out something called The Path, which is a performance coaching platform. It's a weekly performance coaching on demand, me coaching you one-on-one. And then we have instant action downloads that back up everything I'm saying, every script, every presentation, every tool that's there. And that is also includes live coaching as well. So that is first 14 days for students is free. They just jump in and check it out, see if they like it, see if they want to stay with the program. We generally have everybody stay, but after that period, it's $97 a month. So super inexpensive.
Love it. Love it. So erealestatecoach.com will be the place to begin the relationship with you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And Jim, is there a specific quote that you live by and or one that just keeps on popping up in your head? Like what's one quote that you want to share with our audience today?
Well, Henry Ford said this. He said, talk less, work more. Talk less, work more. He used to say that to the people on his assembly lines, but it actually applies to just about everything. The ultimate signal of your success isn't you talking, it's your performance. And your performance is usually you're in action and you're with the client. The only time you're making money is when we're with the buyer or seller, which means you're usually not in the office, you're out in the field. And so that the ultimate, is you going out and doing the work.
Love it. Love it. And I'm sure you've read, a countless number of books, through your 30-year career. Is there one book that you would like to recommend to our audience that you feel would help them, in the area of either mindset or skill set?
A couple. One I'm rereading right now called How to Dig a Well Before You Need It. How to Dig a Well Before You Need It with Harvey McKay. Great book, but it's really about your database and really digging in and building strong relationships with your database. So that's a great book. Another good book that just relates to all kinds of human psychology is a book by Chris Voss, which came out a couple of years ago, which is Never Split the Difference, which is all about negotiation, but it applies. We negotiate listing agreements. Listing agreements are the first bit of that negotiation about price and terms and commissions and all kinds of things. So it's a great book. And when I use anchor points, when I said anchor things, I took that directly from Chris Voss because he used the anchor, and it's a lot of things that he talks about are transformative, and that anchor was transformative for me. And that's me being in the business 30 years. I just heard this anchor idea 2 or 3 years ago.
Love it. Yeah, I teach NLP. I have a NLP training, and we talk a lot about anchoring and all that good stuff as well too. Definitely a strategy of the strategist. So Jim, look, thank you very much, man, for carving out an hour of your busy day, and we've taken you away, and we appreciate your time. You definitely dropped a lot of value today, and I'm forever grateful for giving me the opportunity to share you with my audience, because at the end of the day, it's all about helping the people in this industry that we love so much. And thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me come on.
Oh, you are welcome. All right, everyone, we're checking out. Take care.